Welcome back to Season 4 of the Sober Motivation Podcast. Join me, Brad, each week as my guests and I share incredible and powerful sobriety stories. We're here to show sobriety is possible, one story at a time. Let's go. If you've ever wondered why can't I stop or felt trapped by shame, this episode is going to hit deep. I sat down with Jermaine, a Bay Area native whose drinking didn't start as party chaos. It was quiet, functional, in-house alcoholism that escalated over a decade into withdrawal seizures, liver failure symptoms, jaundice, a coma, and life support. Today, Jermaine is 12 years sober, and this is his story on the Sober Motivation Podcast. What's going on, everyone? Brad here. Great to have you back for another episode. Excited today, I'm actually recording the holiday special of the Sober Motivation Podcast, having a couple of guests that we're going to talk about all of the ways that can help us stay sober over the holidays. I also recorded for Just Between Us podcast, a really cool episode yesterday. And it was an emotional episode. I shared 2 letters that I got from my parents when I was 17 in the psych ward. Basically ultimatum, basically like an intervention of, I had 2 options of picking one rehab that was going to be shorter term, like 3 months, or the other option, which was going to be 10 months and far away from home and a completely different thing. So I walked through sort of what my experience was there and what I learned in rehab a little bit. It's a part 1 of a part 2. But if you want to check out that podcast, I'll drop the link down in the show notes below for the Just Between Us Sober Motivation Podcast. This is more intimate conversations, me sharing more of my story that's not out there on other platforms or other podcasts. And I would love for you to check it out. Now let's get into Jermaine's story. Welcome back to another episode of the Sober Motivation Podcast. Today we've got Jermaine with us. Jermaine, how are you?
I'm doing well today. How you doing, Brad? Happy Monday.
Yeah, it's Monday, man. So kicking off a new week, which is great. I love Mondays.
Yeah, we're inching on, a week away, a week and a half away from Christmas, and not too far away from the new year as well.
I know, man. It's coming up quick, dude. I feel like this year went by in a flash. What was it like for you growing up?
That's a great question. I appreciate you asking. You know, I actually had a really beautiful, I talk about it in my book, man. It was kind of this toxic love where, you know, both my parents were married, but they were married incredibly young. They had my sister and I incredibly young. And it was a house full of love, but then it was also a house full of toxicity as well. God rest my father's soul, but he had his own demons and addictions that he was dealing with. And that heavily influenced what I saw early in life in regards to, you know, his infidelity and the way that I saw how addiction can affect the family dynamic and how people treat you and view you. And although he was a great man who went to work, you know, held a 9 to 5, that didn't affect anything, provided for us when those doors were closed and the weekend happened, you know, they weren't the best all the time. So we ended up having to go spend a lot of weekends with my grandmother and my aunties.
And where did you grow up?
I grew up in the Bay Area, specifically Vallejo, California. I grew up in the Bay Area, you know, this beautiful melting pot of cultural diversity. You know, we're middle class, but my parents made the best of it.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like there's be a lot more information in the book, which I think is great. I mean, I can relate to that in a sense. My mom was 16 when she had twins.
Wow.
And you know, she didn't struggle herself with addiction, but being a single mom of twins at 16, I think back now, I'm 38. I have 3 kids of my own and I'm still figuring it out as I go. So I couldn't even imagine, you know, personally being that young and trying to not only maybe grow up herself or their selves and then also, you know, raise kids, right? You really, I have anyway, realized how tough it is and how difficult it is. Mm-hmm. And even having a little bit more life experience or a lot more than at that spot too. I love the way you drew it up though. So you shared there too with your dad sort of in this struggle with sort of addiction of some sort. I mean, did you have any viewpoint of that as you were younger? I know some people come at it like this is something that they saw kind of how destructive it can be. So they would stay far away from it. And then there's maybe others that maybe they wanted in one way or another, try it out. Like, did you have any thoughts like that growing up?
I didn't actually. Unfortunately, what I thought was going on was normal. You know, what I thought was just like my dad being this young individual that, you know, had his stuff together outside, but indoors was struggling, and I didn't necessarily equate it to any addiction when I was younger. I just kind of unfortunately thought it was just a part of our story. And it wasn't until obviously later on when I formed my own addiction organically and gradually that I can reflect back on it now and see it from a different perspective.
Yeah. So that hindsight really plays a role into, the conclusion, I guess, in a sense that you came to with that. Any memories really stick out to you from growing up, in the Bay Area?
Yeah. I mean, it was just a melting pot of diversity. And, at the time, Vallejo, California had Mare Island. And in Mare Island, it was just like flourishing naval base. And it was amazing, like carnivals and Marine World which is now, I think, Six Flags. But Marine World was there, and it was like our form of a zoo and amusement park. And it was great, man. It was a wonderful, wonderful childhood outside of what was going on in the house. It was amazing. My dad was attentive. He attended every baseball game, every basketball game. It was an amazing childhood, outside of what was going on internally.
Yeah. Love saves. I'm just reading that on your sweatshirt there too. And I'm getting that impression too. Like in that, for you growing up, there was a lot of love. How did you work through kind of what was going on at home? I mean, was it impacting you? Were there any sort of maybe survival techniques that you find you picked up to make it through stuff that was difficult when you were younger?
Yeah, that's a great question. I formed this really overprotective nature about me because I would always want to try to fend from my mother and protect my mother and my sister. I have a little sister who's 2 years younger. And so when we were dealing with certain incidents that would happen on a Friday night or Saturday, I just formed this really overprotective nature about me that I still kind of carry today. And I'm work in progress, but it definitely something that kind of formed like a callus if you're a weightlifter. Like it just happened over a period of time.
Yeah. Well, thanks for sharing that too. What was school like for you?
School was cool, man. I was trying to be the most popular kid in school. And I had a core group of...
Yeah, were you?
Yeah, I was, man. I had a core group of young men that we always hung out together. We were actually called the Kool-Aid Gang. We would bring like packets of Kool-Aid to school and we would eat it and share it with everybody. And it wasn't probably the healthiest thing, but it still brought us together. And it was cool, man. A lot of sports memories. We lived next to a park, so there was a lot of after school playing around and really building like this cohesive community.
Yeah, that's cool, man. When you mention Kool-Aid, I think of the old commercials where he comes smashing through the wall.
Yeah. Actually, that's where it kind of derived from. Just all of us sitting down on a Saturday morning with a big bowl of cereal, watching that commercial and being like, we could be the Kool-Aid Gang. It was pretty interesting.
Yeah, that's cool, man. What about as you kind of work through school there too, like in middle school and high school? You mentioned sports, so you were plugged in playing sports and stuff too. I mean, yeah, I think some people, when I look back at my high school days, that was a big part of their identity too, was connecting sports and in all of that stuff. I mean, was that part of the story?
Yeah, I still have actually through sports. I still have a lot of the guys that I grew up with that I still talk to quite a bit. Like those are my brothers. Those are my source, my accountability partners. Those are the guys that taught me how to love outside of my pops. But those are the guys that really taught me how to love and how to talk through things and have uncomfortable conversations and not run from any kind of adversity. And so now starting out as friends at 3, 4, and 5 years old, we're now 40 in our mid 40s, and we're still connected and joined at the hip to this day.
Yeah, still the Kool-Aid Gang is still together.
Yeah. Well, some of them, that crew I still talk to. Others I don't really talk to. I mean, we people move on and evolve out of certain things.
Yeah, true. When does drinking come in? I mean, is it a thing in high school or no?
No, I didn't really have my first drink and it was actually by accident. It was like my last day of my senior year of high school, where someone just kind of offered me some OJ. I didn't realize it was spiked with vodka. And I remember drinking a glass of it and waking up underneath, at the time, my girlfriend's bedroom. And that was my first experience with like intoxication. And then we went to an amusement park the next day and I couldn't ride any rides because I just didn't feel well. And then I didn't really drink in college. I mean, you have your own individual experiences, but I didn't find myself really engaging in it at a high level. I played basketball, so I wanted to make sure that I was fit. We had early morning practices, so I didn't want to show up hungover. It wasn't until I graduated from college, came home, and started working, and then I had just had my daughter at 23, where I thought after working, my 9 to 5, I would come home and I thought I was grown. So I'd have a beer, which then led to a cocktail, which then at some point led to a half a pint, which at the height of my drinking, I was consuming about 32 ounces of vodka a day.
Wow. So that's like your progression there too. That wasn't necessarily all in one night sort of at the beginning. Interesting too in college, because I feel like college gets a lot of people.
Yeah.
It gets a lot of people because I don't know exactly what it is. Everybody, like you mentioned there, has their own story, right? I mean, that's the beautiful thing about this is everybody has their own unique journey and their experience. But it seems like a lot of us feel uncomfortable or sort of maybe out of place. But I can see how you were able to hold off with having the sports, because I don't know exactly what the stats are or if there is anything, but I've always heard that being plugged into like team sports can really check a lot of boxes as far as like what a human kind of needs, right? For that community, for that connection, for that accountability. So you were able to really, plug into that. And then when you come home, I was wondering too, when you're sharing that story, just with talking with you for a bit, I feel like, and I could be wrong here too, but I feel like maybe in one way or another, that's the way kind of you saw your dad drinking. Is there any relation there too of like doing work and working hard and then sort of the work hard, play hard thing, or no?
I would imagine so, because I did see it, right? I would see him come home after working his 9 to 5. And once again, he was incredibly stable, right? It wasn't like he was losing jobs. He kept the same job for 35 years. But it was like, come home, take a shower, have a drink, and then really wind down for the evening. And then on the weekends, it was just kind of like a free for all, right? And so I would imagine that I saw that pattern and kind of soaked it in, not even realizing that I was soaking that pattern in, and realized and thinking to myself, that was okay. That was the norm. Because I do remember wanting to take the edge off after work. And instead of maybe exercising, going for a walk, watching my favorite TV show, I would stop at the liquor store and grab something on the way home. Yeah.
There was another guy I had on the podcast too, and he had shared that his parents were drinkers and partiers. A lot of the same story. Their whole life wasn't falling apart, but he had said that they didn't like force him to drink. They weren't like drink, but from watching them over the years, it kind of taught him maybe how to drink. And I think that's interesting too, because people have different stories here, right? Some people that are drinking, their life is falling apart and you can see that. And then other people, their life is not really falling apart in front of our eyes.
Right.
So it's really hard to kind of connect those dots of like drinking causing problems. But then I think knowing what we know now is that, as humans in general, I think we can be pretty good at kind of keeping things together without everybody else around us picking up on it, especially when it comes to drinking too, because there's that guilt element and there's that shame element involved too. So keeping things hidden, what we're struggling with, we seem to become pretty good at.
Yeah, and I was a master of disguise, Brad. Other than it permeating out of my skin at times, because my choice was vodka and only really vodka. If I got my hands on something different, I would of course consume it, but I would douse myself with a lot of cologne to try to hide it coming out of my pores. And I still held a 9 to 5 myself, right? I would go to work and I was functional, and I was unfortunately driving. I would go to stores. You know what I mean? Like I would do something my behavior was normal, as though I wasn't, under the influence, but I was always under the influence. And unless you knew me on an intimate level, most people didn't have any idea.
Yeah. And that's interesting too. And maybe we'll chat about that later too, because I'm always interested in about when we do get sober and then mention it to people, where people are like, hey, I never knew you were drinking that much. But maybe we'll get to that sort of like if that was part of your story. Walk me through the progression here, right? Because it started out, you got your job, your daughter is born.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's stressful too, and life and everything. I mean, it's beautiful, like the most beautiful thing in the world, but it also is tough too. was for me anyway. I can't speak for everybody, but it was difficult sort of to navigate, how am I going to show up? And my world is, changed a lot for the better, but a lot different. How did this progress over time for you? And like, what time span are we talking here? Like weeks or years?
So we're talking about a decade, right? So from 2020 or 2003 to 2013 is when the progression really began and evolved. And so it's like I said, it started out with me just wanting to have a beer after work. And then I didn't like how full my stomach will become. So then I was like, let me just have a cocktail. And then 1 is not good enough. And then 2 is not good enough. And 3 is not good enough. And then it becomes a thing where I'm waking up at 5:30 in the morning because I'm an early riser. And before I even brush my teeth, I'm reaching over to the side of the bed and I'm grabbing a cocktail. And that's how I would start my day. And over a period of time, though, Brad, what I saw was my body physically started to be affected, right? Because there's a social aspect of it. Then there's the breakup of my, at the time, girlfriend. So now I have this situation where I'm living in two separate households trying to raise a daughter, and that wasn't planned. But no one at that young age is typically going to stick around with an alcoholic. So I had to kind of eat that and take that L. In the meantime, she takes me for child support so that I can support my daughter. I wasn't making a lot of money. And I just kind of felt like there was this spiral. And even though I met someone else and that relationship started off as fire and desire, my alcoholism just progressed and progressed and progressed until it got to a point, Brad, where my body could no longer take it. But more importantly, I wanted to mentally stop after like year 6. Like I was just exhausted and I wanted to make a change. So I decided to stop cold turkey. I didn't realize that you can die from stopping cold turkey, right? And so I had a grand mal seizure within 24 hours. And I was rushed into the emergency room. Of course, I was observed for 24 hours, brought back home. I thought I was like, that's it. I'm done with drinking. And then I was like, well, let me socially drink. So then I ended up going, trying to socially drink, which then spiraled back into drinking again. That lasted for like another year, Brad. And then I was like, oh, well, I don't want to do cold turkey. So let me go ahead and wean myself off of it. And within 48 hours, I had my second grand mal seizure. And at that point in time, I realized that I needed like major changes, but I still wasn't ready. And so eventually I ended up drinking myself when my pancreas levels were like, my pancreas was going to explode. My liver levels, I had like the beginning stages of cirrhosis. I had hepatitis C, non-viral. My skin was yellow. My eyes were yellow. Everything was awful. And so they ended up admitting me into the hospital, which is when I slipped into the coma and ultimately on life support for 3 weeks. And that was in 2013.
That was in 2013. Wow, man. It's so interesting. You hear, I have anyway, and I'm sure you have too. You hear so many different stories about I wasn't ready. And you hear the stuff that people go through. And if you were just somebody that didn't understand sort of how maybe some of this works, I'm not going to paint myself as the guy who has it all figured out, because that's not true. But have an idea of how it somewhat works. I think from the outside, you'd be wondering, well, what the heck is it going to take for this to change? You mentioned there too, that your girlfriend had left, you had broken up with you as well, not going to stay with an alcoholic. Like, did people around you, they picked up on sort of what was going on then?
They did. It was hard not to. Because what was happening is she was seeing it on an intimate level, right? Because we lived together. So she was seeing the empty vodka bottles. She was seeing the erratic behavior. Now I was never a violent human being, but there's still some, erratic behavior that happens. The late night drives to the store, the late night, like food cravings, right? So I would leave at like midnight, 12:30 to grab Taco Bell. Like there were certain behaviors that she started catching on to. And then you could start to smell it on my breath in the morning. And so she would start to share with her parents, and then she would share it intimately with my sister. My sister would share it with my parents. And it just became this thing where everyone knew about it, but because it wasn't affecting them directly, besides her, of course, no one really talked to me about it. And if they tried to talk to me about it, Brad, I would immediately end the conversation because I wasn't ready to accept that I had an addiction as well as accountability for my behavior.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks for sharing that too. So you have your first seizure there, and that was like 2009. I kind of guesstimate there.
Yeah. So about
The first one?
2009, I tried to stop cold turkey, not realizing that after heavy drinking like that, you need you need to do it medically, right? I had no idea about it. So I was like, let me just stop.
Yeah.
And then of course I had the DTs. I had DTs really bad. And so I was like, oh, they're just going to go away. And within 24 hours, all of a sudden I woke up and I was in the back of an ambulance. And it wasn't until later that it was shared with me that I had a major seizure, which is incredibly scary, because if you don't have a history of epilepsy or seizures, and all of a sudden you have a seizure, you don't really know why. And then you start to do research and realize that a lot of people die from grand mal seizures. That should have been my wake up call.
Yeah. What's that experience like? I mean, do you remember having the seizure? Is there any memory of it or no?
I do remember leading up to it, I started to feel like I was hallucinating. Like I really started to feel as though I was seeing like leprechauns and like these things in the corner of the room. But I, once again, was just like, hey, this is just a part of detoxing. I didn't really realize the disconnect between, your brain neurologically when it doesn't have alcohol after consuming it for so long. And I didn't realize that your brain just shuts down at that point. I had no idea. So I look up, I'm in the back of an ambulance, I'm in an MRI machine, and I just know that my whole body was sore, like from head to toe was sore from the intensity of my body seizing.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, and I definitely don't think you're alone in that, not knowing what the effects are. You kind of step back a little bit in the normalization of alcohol in all the cultures across the world. People would kind of debate, where it's more, more ingrained or not. But everybody I've talked to from a lot of corners of the world, it's in there. And it's really hard to say, hey, this thing you get at convenience stores, you get at every restaurant, you get at the grocery store. It's got this nice can. It's got flashy. It's cool. They got art on it. They got different art. It looks so attractive at times. It can anyway. And this is what it can cause. So I don't think you would be at all alone in that. And I fielded a lot of messages over the years on Instagram and email and stuff about people that I caution of that exact thing. And I honestly don't know how many people take it seriously. I really don't, but I think it's good to bring it up that, once that is a possibility, and it does happen. I used to work in a detox at a hospital, and we saw it a lot. I mean, luckily they were in a controlled environment with support there, so nobody died from it. But if you're at home or you're driving or you fall or whatever, all that stuff is very dangerous. So it's good awareness.
Yeah. So it's my lifelong journey now to be this individual that educates the general public about the dangers of alcohol, right? Because it is accessible and it is culturally acceptable too as well, right? Like if you and I were sitting in with a group of friends and I was like, oh yeah, I don't smoke crack, everybody would be like, oh my God, congratulations, right? But the minute you say, oh, I don't drink, everyone like clutches their pearls and looks at you as though they don't trust you anymore. And it's just this weird dynamic that I've come across over the past 12 years.
Yeah, you're right. People kind of use a comparison like that or similar a lot. If you say, I quit smoking, everybody's cheering for you. Like, or with other stuff too, everybody's rooting for you. They're cheering for you because you can see I think society understands the benefits of some of those choices. Well, if you're not doing that, you're on the right track. But I feel like people as a whole don't understand the benefits of quitting drinking or understand the consequences of not, or what addiction actually looks like, can feel like, and how it can show up, because everybody has this Hollywood view of somebody struggling with alcohol fits into this box and they check, though they look like that, they walk like that, they talk like that. And it's so far from the truth.
Yeah.
There's so many more people that are so close to all of us, I'm sure, that are struggling. And we would, probably have no idea of it.
No, there's actually a story that I share where one morning because now I'm like this fitness guru. I go to the gym at 5 o'clock in the morning. Like health and fitness is like a premium for me. And I remember going to this market down the street from my house, and it has to be 7 a.m. I want to go to Gatorade. And this woman pulls up in a beautiful Mercedes. She's got a beautiful suit on. She just looks like she is well done. So we're sitting and I'm in back of her, and she goes to order two like a pint of vodka or a half a pint of vodka. And I'm like, oh, snap. I was like, it's mad early, but maybe she's just going to drink it on the way home when she gets home. So I was actually curious at this point, a little nosy. So I'm watching her, and I want to make sure she doesn't think that I'm just like totally a weirdo. But I'm watching her. She gets into the driver's seat. She opens up her coffee cup. She pours it in there, closes it, starts to drink it, drives off. And the whole time I'm thinking, number one, that used to be me. And number two, she's going to either lead a team, or she's someone's CEO, or she's going to a job, and no one has any idea that she has this potential addiction. And that was a powerful moment for me, not just for me to see myself, right? Not just for me to look in the mirror through her, but also just to know that there are so many other people that are struggling.
Yeah, for sure. And that's why I think it's definitely so important. Like, I love that journey that you're on about increasing the awareness of the impacts of alcohol and how dangerous it can be. I mean, especially for you, you kind of go into this, and I share it a lot probably on the podcast, but I don't think there's anybody that I've ever met that says when they start drinking that they want it to end up here or at other places, right? To where you want the relationship to be like this. I was curious, I picked up a while back about, maybe social drinking. Like, was that part of your story and then that kind of slid away?
Not necessarily. Like, my story is not necessarily like one of social drinking turned into my full-blown addiction. Mine was just a steady dose of like these micro doses of that dopamine hit, right? Mine was just like every night, just wanted to kind of alter my reality a little bit. Then it began to be like every night I wanted to alter my reality, to all day I wanted to alter my reality. And so social I actually didn't really have time. I was working so many jobs just to provide for myself and my daughter that I didn't even have time to really do anything socially. This was all in-house.
Yeah, in-house. That I haven't heard of it referred to like that before, but it makes sense.
Yeah, it was all.
What was it? I mean, you mentioned, we talked earlier too about the readiness. Yeah, we talked earlier too about the readiness, and like I would love to go a little bit deeper on that if we could. Why do you feel like with the seizures happening in your life, and you're definitely experiencing some consequences externally, right? Why do you feel like you weren't ready at that point to make a change?
I was scared. I was nervous. I was scared. I didn't want to face my reality. I didn't feel like I was where I needed to be in society, as far as I didn't purchase a home. I didn't really have a career. I was broke as a joke. There was a lot of things. I was sleeping in my car and homeless at one point, and I just wanted to drown in instead of face it head on. So I just wasn't ready to face life the way that a normal human being would do. I wanted to continue to run from it because, hell, I felt like at the time, if I ran from it, eventually it would go away. And every day I woke up in the morning, I realized it wasn't going away. And my problems just got worse and worse. And but once again, instead of just facing it head on, I would just drown myself in liquor. And Brad, in hindsight,
Man, that's powerful.
In hindsight, Brad, I'm like, what if I would have stopped? Like, what if I would have stopped years ago? And there were so many warnings for me, whether it was being pulled over. So I got a quick story. May I share a story?
Yeah, of course.
So I got a quick story about warnings and signs, right? So one morning I get up and I hear this voice as loud as I'm speaking to you right now. And it says, clean out the car. And I was like, I don't really feel like washing and cleaning my car. And it was like, no, clean out the car. So I used to keep vodka bottles under the seat, in the trunk, in the back seat, because I always had it, right? And so I remember getting up in the morning, washing the car, cleaning everything out. I head to a friend's barbecue. I spend about an hour, hour and a half. I come back, and on my way back, as a cop is coming the opposite way of the street, it turns around, puts the lights on, pulls me over, right? Now, I've already been drinking all day. So I'm paranoid. I didn't realize at the time, Brad, that I had a suspended driver's license because of back child support. So when they pull me over and they run my driver's license, they have cause to search my car. So they pull me out, put me in handcuffs, put me in the back of the car. Now, they don't breathalyze me or anything, but they still start searching my car. So they search my car. They don't find anything. They let me go. They don't even tow my car. And that should have been a warning and a wake up sign for me. But even then, I went back home and started drinking again. So sometimes you're just not ready, even though that's knocking on your door. And I always say that your family really can't help you. Your friends really can't help you. It is a personal journey. And when it's your time to be ready is when you'll decide to make those choices to be better.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks for sharing that story too. It's so interesting, right? Because sometimes I feel like in those moments, because I've had a few of them myself, the blue light prayers, like, please just let me slide by this time, is that, I wonder if things went different. I wonder if I was held accountable in those moments where at the time I was like, this is the greatest thing, right? I kind of slid through the cracks yet again, where I wonder if it would have went the other way. Like, nobody knows, right? You never know going back, like if one change would have changed our perspective or got us to that readiness place, which is so interesting. I had a story, man. I had a bunch of warrants out for my arrest at one point, and I didn't know I did. And I was driving my girlfriend's grandmother's car, and I got pulled over by this sheriff. And it was like a T, well, not like a T, but you could go right or go left. And I kind of got stuck in the middle, didn't know where I was going, so I hesitated a bit. So this sheriff pulled me over, and she was like, hey, whose car is it? And your license and stuff. And no, I don't even know if she asked for my license, but I had those warrants, and she never even ran anything. And, that's another weird thing. I say, like, man, things happen at weird times, because if I would have gotten held accountable for that stuff then, I eventually did, but the timing was so perfect. It was weird. If it would have happened then, I don't know that I would have been necessarily ready for what was coming downstream at me, which is really interesting how some of that stuff plays out. I wanted to go back to one of the other things you said there too, because I really loved it, that you were scared. And that you also kind of hinted there too at maybe necessarily it wasn't the alcohol, but it was what was on the other side of it. It was life. And I mean, that it has so many layers to it. You mentioned a few of them. And I wonder if that's plays a big part in a lot of people's journeys. Is it's not really the alcohol maybe necessarily. I mean, if you are experiencing withdrawal symptoms, like, that is scary. So you kind of keep it going to avoid that. But if that's not part of it, then it's scared of not really letting go of the alcohol. But we know after we're done numbing ourselves and avoiding everything and escaping through drinking, well, life is going to appear on the other end. And are we prepared to deal with that sober? Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, sure. I'll speak for myself, right? Because I started drinking in my early 20s, I felt like I had experienced all this. I had all this life experience, but I really didn't. So as I became an adult and you start to really learn these life experiences that you experience them, like separation and child support and court. And, I was contempt in court. They were going to throw me in jail on a suspended license and getting evicted and cars being repossessed, right? You start to experience all of this, what your life looks like currently. And I had no idea how to fix them. Like, I didn't have the money to get the car back. I didn't have, obviously, the money to prevent myself from being evicted. I didn't have the money for food most times. And so for me, I was like, well, I'm just going to drink and I'm just going to run away from this. And it was something that I continuously did. Now at 45, I realized that it was a lot of childhood trauma that I didn't deal with, right? There was a lot of young adult trauma I didn't deal with. There was a lot of things that I should have dealt with in preparation for adulthood that I kind of swept under the rug. And then I started to develop this avoidance personality, right? Where I'm avoiding things all the time, and alcohol was just helping that. Right? It was just an antidote to the overall bigger picture, which was this avoidance personality.
Man, thanks for sharing that too. A lot of those things relatable. Eviction, cars being towed and not being able to pay the bill and losing the car altogether. I had that happen. $15,000 car gone because I couldn't pay the towing storage fee when I decided to, go and have a look at it. Man, if we only knew then what we know now, right? I mean, I guess that's the big thing is like, hey, can you, and I think in my life today, that's a big part of how I try to learn, right? Is sort of wisdom from other people or direction from other people or their experiences and kind of understanding that, back in my days where I was getting so messed up, like my best thinking ended me up there. And for some time, I wasn't willing to give that up.
Right.
I thought I was going to be able to think my way or manipulate my way or smooth my way forward, or I would just wake up one day and everything would be different. Like I would be achieving my goals in life. And it is really hard though when you get in that spot. Like when you get in that spot, it can feel, for me anyway, it just felt really hopeless. Like I was living on my brother's floor of his bedroom apartment, and I was on felony probation at 18 years old and I couldn't hold down a job. And I got fired from like Little Caesars, from Red Robin, every restaurant hospitality job I ever had, right? They would call me in and I knew what they were calling me in early for. So most of the time I would never show up, but it just it felt so sad. But the other part of it is it felt so normal just to kind of live a life of disappointment. And I think a lot of people question me, like, why didn't you, figure it out? I mean, this is the honest truth that maybe you can relate to, maybe others can, maybe not. That way of life for me was so predictable. Mm-hmm. A life of maybe quote unquote success or doing what I was supposed to be doing or contributing in a positive way was so outside of my wheelhouse. It was so uncomfortable. Right. So I kind of just found myself in what I knew, even though it was so destructive.
Yeah. And you actually bring up a really good point, and thank you for sharing. It is the norm, right? It's the comfortability and the normal that we tend to fall into, where losing a job I'll just get another one, right? Because history has shown I'll lose one because of drinking, but then I'll get hired for another one. And then it becomes this vicious cycle. And I remember getting like general manager jobs of restaurants that are paying, 6 figures, and 6 months getting fired because I used to keep a Sprite bottle, half vodka, half Sprite. And the owner found it, whether it's the hostess or the owner or another coworker, somebody always sniffed it out, and I would just get canned. And then I would apply. And because I had such an extensive resume at this point, people would hire me. I would go in there sober for 30 minutes, just sober enough to get the job. And then I would end up losing it. And when we're in that space, it does seem normal to us, but it's the people that we hurt in the process, right? Whether it's a girlfriend, a wife, or your children, family, friends, it's those people that are the ones that are suffering, looking from the outside in, because there's nothing they could really do for us except to catch us when we fall.
Yeah. And that's why I mentioned too a lot. It's like throwing a rock in a pond. There's always a ripple effect. I mean, being in the addiction affects other people. What I love most about that is the flip side of it too. When we get sober, I mean, it impacts everybody around us too, which is cool. But yeah, it's kind of like that, that spot. I mean, this is kind of where I always get torn, man. I love that we're having this conversation because I always get torn with this because I never know when somebody's going to be ready. I mean, I wish I did. I wish I knew what it was going to take for that individual to be ready to do what is going to be required for them to change their life. And I wish even they knew. Maybe they could get to it sooner, like if I knew it was like, okay, if this happens, I'll be ready. And I think we do a really good job at convincing ourselves and kind of drawing lines in the sand, right? If I get a DUI, of course I'm going to sober up. If I have kids, of course I'm going to sober up. If I get that job or that house or that whatever, that relationship happens, of course I'm going to sober up. And I mean, you hear the same story time and time again. It might keep us on the straight and narrow for a little bit, but that stuff usually fades. Mm-hmm. So it's like that readiness. So, I mean, bring us up to speed, man, if you feel ready for it.
Yeah.
Ready.
Yeah.
What was it for you? I mean, the coma, and walk us through that story a bit.
Yeah. So there were warning signs, like I said, and how graphic can I get? I mean, I want to be reasonable, but
Yeah, reasonable all the way.
so, there were warning signs physically, right? Where I would wake up in the morning with, dry heaves first thing in the morning. I was down to like 140 pounds. I'm naturally 5'10", like 170. I'm at 185 because I lift now, but at the time I was like 165, but I had dropped to like 140. I wasn't eating because if I ate, I felt like it would absorb the alcohol and the effects wouldn't be as great as they were. So I just wouldn't eat and have an empty stomach throughout the day. And so also my urine was like the color, it was like orange. And I had stomach cramps, and it was just all these physical things that were taking a toll, but I kept ignoring them, or I just maybe thought that they would go away over time. And so it wasn't until I woke up one morning, this had to be like this was June of 2013. And I didn't know what pancreatitis was, right? I just knew that my stomach was hurting really badly. And so one morning I woke up with the worst stomach ache that I'd ever experienced in my life. So I go to the doctor, and my physician, Dr. Okochi, was like, hey, let's do a couple of lab works. Maybe it's just indigestion. And I'm like, okay, cool. So I do the labs. I go home, and I immediately hit the door and have another drink. And within 10 minutes, he calls me and says, hey, Jermaine, you should run to the ER like now. And I'm like, why? Like, I'm chilling. And he's like, no, you need to go. He was like, your pancreas levels are enough to explode, and your liver levels are high enough for it to fail right now. So I'm like, and at the time, think about this. He's essentially telling me that I'm dying, right? In a nutshell. Yet my focus was like, oh, do I have to go? Right? Do I have to go right now? As though it was like impeding on my free time. But I went anyway. And immediately they put me into a room, and the admitting doctor walks in, and he doesn't say hi to me. He doesn't say anything. He says, you're going to die. And that was the most sobering, bone chilling experience up to date that I had ever experienced, to hear someone, a physician, right, tell me that I'm going to die. And I felt like like my mortality just kind of come over me. And he goes, look at your eyes. Have you looked at your eyes lately? He was like, they are like butter. And so they admitted me into the hospital, and I didn't initially get better. I got worse, and ultimately led me to life support. And what was strange about that is I had came to, and 2 days later, my parents walked in. Not even 2 days later, my parents walked in when I came to, and I saw the terror on my parents' faces. And when I saw the terror on my parents' faces, I knew right there, not only the scare of me physically and what I had just gone through, but I didn't want to put my parents through that again. And it was 2:00 in the morning the next day, and I just wanted to feel normal again, Brad. So all the nurses were at their stations, and I was like, I just want to go to the bathroom and piss like a normal human being, right? And so I get up, and as my foot hits the cold hospital floor, I fall on my face. And what I didn't realize is that somehow, some way, neurologically, I had temporary paralysis on my right side of my body. So I ended up crawling to the bathroom, and then the nurses came in to pick me up and drug me and put me back in the bed. And I couldn't walk for a good, like, almost 6 months. So I was wheelchaired in. I walked in, and I was wheelchaired back into my house for the next 6 months. I had a nurse come in 3 days a week to check my vitals and physical therapy. And I started to try to find ways to keep myself busy, because I had been in hospitality for so long that I didn't think I could go back to that world. You're surrounded by alcohol, and you're surrounded by this environment that I was like, if I'm going to get sober, I can't go back to that. And so I was in a really depressed, lost space after getting out of the hospital for a while.
Wow, man. Wow. So when does sobriety cross your mind? Like, as you're going through this whole process, I mean, does it happen right away, or is it, when does that kind of come up for you that like, hey, I got to quit drinking?
In the bed. When I was in the bed, laying down, looking up at the ceiling, nobody around, just me and my thoughts, I knew that I had to stop. I had no other choice, right? They put me on a liver donor list. They were checking my pancreas levels. Like, I didn't have a choice, Brad. It was like sober up or die, literally. And so I'm laying in the bed and I'm just kind of thinking to myself, like, this can't be it for me. Like, I'm 33 years old. Like, I can't check out now. I just so many things that I wanted to do that if it ended now, right? Or if I knew I had to stop. So when I got home, that same physician calls me and he goes, "Hey, Jermaine," he's like, "Dude, I really like you. You have such a great future. I don't want to see you die." He's like, "Would you consider going into an inpatient program or an outpatient program?" And believe it or not, at that time, I was like, "I don't know, man. I don't know. I got to call you back." And so I think a week later, I ended up calling him back and I said, "Hey, I said, an inpatient program scares me. I've heard too many things about it." I was like, "Well, what about an outpatient program?" And so I ended up the next day going into Kaiser Permanente's outpatient program. It was 5 days a week. It was a 9 to 5 thing. There was a therapist. I had never sought a therapist before, so I had an opportunity to really talk some things out. And I became a student of it because I didn't want to become a victim of it. So I'm sitting in these circles and I'm hearing all these horrific stories about people and what they've gone through. And I'm hearing, "Hey, I'm so-and-so and I'm day 1, or I'm so-and-so and I'm day 2, or I'm so-and-so and day 30. And here I am, like, I'm Jermaine and I'm day 14. And I just remember setting a goal for myself and saying, I want to be able to say, "Hey, I'm Jermaine Burse. I'm 1 year sober." Like, that was a goal for me. And now I can sit here 12 years later and say that I'm Jermaine Burse. I'm 12 years sober. And it's the best decision I've ever made in my life.
Wow, man. Beautiful. Huge congrats on that, man. 12 years.
Thanks.
Even at 33, though, at 33, to have gone through all of that and to be in that position with having, it sounds like a few people there had mentioned to you, you were going to die. And I think when you look back, you identified the signs too. Like, there was truth. There was a lot of truth to that.
Mm-hmm.
And then your parents come and, it sounds like that was an experience as well to maybe in that moment understand the impact of all of this sort of. I thought for the longest time it was my life. I can just do whatever I want. It's only affecting me. And it was very selfish of me to live like that. But at the time, I just really couldn't see it. I think I was in just so much emotional pain. It's really just what made sense. It provided that relief from everything. And I didn't realize the impact it was having on everybody else. And I don't know if that's relatable, but that moment seems like it really was important to you, really stood out to you, and maybe a catalyst for change too. And then you do this outpatient program and sort of, jump in there, which, that's good, man. Because I think there's a lot of people, like, you might know more than I do. And you mentioned in that point where you didn't have a choice. I've heard stories the other way, man, where people are in a spot like that, or worse, if that is a thing. Maybe they got a transplant, maybe they had other stuff. And like, some people go back to drinking afterwards. Like, even though they're like, it's either drinking, it's either sobriety or dying, it can get some people there, which, is so tough, but I think it's the reality out there. And what'd you learn through the outpatient program? And
I would love to touch on that last part you just said in regards to those individuals out there that even when they do face their own version of rock bottom, because rock bottom is different for everybody, they still choose their chemical dependency. And when I think about it, it really saddens me, like, enough to like make me cry, because, these are human beings just like you and I. And it's almost like this, I get this like survival remorse behind it. Because my tattoo artist, I have a whole bunch of tattoos, man. And he passed away a couple years ago and he was 40 years old. And what was interesting is we're spending like 6-8 hour sessions for years together. And I'm sharing my sobriety stories and I'm sharing my life and all these things. He was battling alcoholism this entire time. And I had no idea until I got the phone call that he was in the hospital on his deathbed. And I felt so bad because I'm like, what could I have done? How come I didn't see the signs? Like, how come I couldn't have shared? Maybe I didn't mention something I should have mentioned. And so that's why, Brad, I'm on this lifelong journey, man, to help those that feel like there is no choice out there, man. And that's why I'm so open and raw and transparent with my testimony, because I want people out there just like yours, right? I want people out there to see us flourishing. and know that there's a way out of this.
Yeah, that's so powerful, man. And then you know all the signs and you know everything to look for and still aren't really, picking up on it necessarily, right? I mean, that's how it can be. And that's sort of the shame behind it. I had somebody message me today and they were committed to not drinking and they were a couple months into their journey and they sent me a message, kind of looking for advice. I mean, giving advice is not really my thing. I'm more share, hey, what I've heard or my experience in, filled with shame and guilt of like drinking again. And it's like, I think that's the thing that keeps us stuck, man. Mm-hmm. That's the thing that keeps us quiet, is because we feel like inherently there's something off with us. There's something broken. Our moral compass is just not on track to where it should be. So we don't want to share with anybody else. But I think the truth is, like, there's a lot of people going through this. Mm-hmm. Like, talk with people about it. If people mention it to me that they're struggling, I'm not necessarily in shock or like awe of it. I'm like, I mean, that's okay. It's okay. I mean, if you want to do something about it, there's opportunity for that. But if that's where you are right now, I mean, that's okay. Like, I've been there. A lot of people have been there. It's not, and I think that's important for people to talk to the right people. Mm-hmm. But I'm with you on that, man. I had so many people. I used to work at a residential treatment center and I used to work with like teenagers. I did that for 7 years and I worked with like 15-year-olds to 18, 19-year-olds. And I had some guys I worked with for 6 months every day, dude. And in a long story short, they ended up dying. And it's tough, right? It's so tough because, yeah, you can go through, could I have done something different? I always kind of go through, was I too easy on him or this other guy, was I too hard on him? Should have and could have and done all this stuff. But, that's the tough thing, kind of what we're dealing with here, is that it can do a really good job to convince people to keep going and not get help, and that, they're so much different. But I think even your story, your journey, it's very different than mine, but I think there's a lot of things that we share in common of, how we feel about the whole situation too, and I just try to tell people, like, maybe identify the things you have in common with others, because it's, humans are humans at the end of the day, right?
Yeah, they really are. And, statistically, one in every 5 individuals has some form of addiction. They may not be like you and I's, but it's some form of it. And I just want to be an advocate for hope and help. You know what I mean? Like, I see people suffering in silence. And so it's interesting because I went from being where I was at to getting back into hospitality. And I was hosting wine, I used wine pouring and I used to host, these private wine tastings. And I never had a craving for it. I never had a thought about it. Like, I was done with it. I was completely done with it. And I do a daily self-audit, right? And I know what serves me and what doesn't serve me. And alcohol has just never served me. So I just don't see myself ever going back to it because my life is so beautiful now. But my transparency and my honesty in these wine tastings, they're interesting because these people come here to have a good time, right? They want to taste wine. They want to have a good time. And organically, these conversations will happen. And they'd be like, hey, my mom is suffering, or my dad is suffering, or I have a cousin or an uncle or someone suffering. What are the tools that I could give them, Jermaine? And the only thing I share with them is just continue to love on them. Continue to love on them unconditionally. Like, love them in spite of themselves. That's the only thing that we could really do for people. And, I'm sorry to hear about those, individuals that passed away that you mentioned based on addiction. My relationship with alcohol has never been one of happiness or joy, right? Like, my grandfather, my mother's father, who I never met, he died of cirrhosis from drinking at 40. My father died almost 4 years ago of cancer, but it was alcohol-related cancer. I have 2 uncles die from heart attacks because of alcoholism. One of my best friends and tattoo artists died a few years ago. So I know the effects of it. Like, I know what can happen if you don't get a hold of it. On the flip side, I envy people to a certain degree that can socially drink. Like, I envy those to a certain level that can have a drink or 1 or 2 and then be done with it. Like, I just don't have that personality.
Yeah. Well, you and me both, man. Just the your relatives there, and then your friend too. It's like you're rewriting, things maybe for the future generations of your family too, which I see a lot of people doing right now with a lot of different things. Is maybe changing course to how we're going about dealing with things, or so many areas of life, right? Which I think it's like it's time we put an end to this continuing on, to just normalizing this, because you even mentioned earlier in the story with your dad, which I think, everybody's going to have different degrees in which they drink, right? But I think that is probably a common thing for kids to see, is when their parents come home after a long day, hey, they might only have one drink. Yeah. And I'm not here to say what's right or wrong. It's really not my position in the world. But I think that as kids and young adults and whatever, we pick up on that. And then you never know what else is left unresolved under it, to where the drinking can turn into something else. And I think the other thing is, the longer you keep it around, the more likelihood for it to turn problematic, or for it to turn into a substance use disorder of some sort, So man, there's so many layers to it.
There's so many layers. And what's beautiful, and what I'm one of the, proudest things I'm proud of is, my son and my daughter, they've never seen me intoxicated, right? They've never seen me drink. They've never seen me crack a beer open. They've never seen any of that. They've only seen me sober. So I have the ability to break a chain in what environment I place them in regards to alcohol. Now, I can't control what happens outside, right? But what I can control is what they're able to see in the home. And that even extends as far as like my career path and what I've chosen. And in 12 years, becoming a professional, critically acclaimed artist, and having a restaurant consulting business, and now writing a book about my addiction journey and purpose. Like, these are things that I've turned an addiction into a plus that my kids can really look back at and say, damn, like, my dad really turned his life around, man.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah. I mean, when you look at it that way too, of everything you've been able to accomplish on the sober side of things, and you hear the stories a lot of people turning things around and finding new passions and really going after their goals and all the opportunities. I mean, when you quit drinking, you get back so much time. Like, you don't get there. It's still 24 hours in a day, but you're showing up for them in a completely different way. And you're available. The awareness has increased. The clarity has increased. The confidence increases, because when you start out the day hungover, feeling like you're controlled by something, it just really knocks you down. Yeah, I'm curious to go back to one other thing, and then we can head towards wrapping up. Is you had mentioned to your friend, your tattoo artist, and maybe other people are suffering or struggling in silence. I mean, what do you think that is there? I mean, because I feel like it's part of your story too. I mean, I know it's definitely part of mine, but like, what do you think keeps us stuck in that spot to where we don't share kind of what's going on with people?
Shame and disappointment.
No.
I truly believe that shame and disappointment is what prevents someone, even though you want to share it, right? Like, you have an opportunity to share it. You want to just cry out, I need help. It's the shame and disappointment and unpredictability about the reaction of the others too, as well, which goes into a lack of trust. I think those all fall, for me, they all fall into that category of why someone doesn't just say, hey man, is there anything you can do for me? Like, I don't want to be in this anymore. And then unfortunately too, there is an accountability that has to happen to say, I am addicted to something. I am an addict. I think only then can you really start the healing process, as well as accepting full accountability of who you've become. And then having a strong case of the want tos. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, what do you mean by that? A strong case of the want tos?
So my pastor growing up used to say, you have to have a strong case of the want to. Like, you have to want it bad enough. Like, you have to want sobriety bad enough to want to change. You got to want success bad enough to make the sacrifices in order to reach your goal. Like, you have to want to do these things bad enough. And I remember reading a book, because I became a bibliophile about 5 years ago. And I just remember reading a story of this guru and this young man wanting to make money. And the guru, and I'll make this story short, the guru was like, hey, if you want to make money, come out to the beach at 5 o'clock in the morning. And the kid's like, yo, I said I want to make money. I don't want to swim. And he goes, no, come out there. So the kid comes out there in a suit. He dunks his head in the water to the point where he's struggling to breathe. It pulls the kid up. He goes, hey, man, why are you trying to kill me? Like, I said I wanted to make money. He said, if you want success or you want sobriety, as bad as you wanted to breathe in that moment is when you'll accomplish it. And that's what a strong case of the 1-2s means to me.
Yeah, beautiful. I love that. Yeah, things have to change. You can't just, I don't think so anyway. I mean, I know people who are they enjoying the process? Maybe that's for them to figure out, but other things have to change for us other than just not drinking. I mean, that's obviously the first step, but now, especially in your story, it's like, how do you start to unpack everything that's happened before that moment and everything else that we've maybe avoided or that we haven't, worked through or talked about or shared about. And I think that part too, like you mentioned there, yeah, that's a scary sort of thing. But yeah, the shame, I mean, it keeps people stuck. And, I always ask people too, like, hey, the first time you shared with somebody, we have this idea in our head, right? What this is going to look like and how it's going to feel. And I asked people too, I said, was it anything like that? And they said, oh my gosh, no, it wasn't anything near how terrifying I thought it was going to be. So if you're out there and you're struggling, like find somebody that, you can trust or somebody that's on this journey themselves that understands. And there's so many people out there. And just like people that are struggling with drinking, there's a lot of people out there that are sober that without the conversation, we might not even realize. Yeah, I've known people for years and, not close, but in passing or here or there, and then find out that, there's something they're on. Maybe they don't call it sober, but they don't drink and whatever personal development journey they're on. And it's like, wow, that's cool.
Yeah. I'll tell you what I love.
Anything else that you want to share?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah. So I would love the audience, if they are interested to pick up my book. It's called The Autopsy of My Former Self. And it's a wonderful journey, self-reflection and redemption. And it's on all platforms, Barnes and Nobles, Amazon, Goodreads, you name it. And I just would like people to support it. There's something in it for everyone, from someone that may be addicted or even someone that's a spouse, a girlfriend, a family member of dealing with a nephew, or a son or a daughter that are addicted. There's a lot in this book. And it took me 2 years. It took me 2 years and 10 months to finally finish writing it and then ultimately getting it picked up by a publishing company. It is dedicated to my dad, because he's no longer here, and I know he'd be extremely proud of me. But I really would love the world to read the book and really absorb. Jay-Z said, I lived through it so that you don't have to go through it. And so this book is kind of that blueprint.
Oh, that's beautiful, man. Well, mentioning your dad there, what were his thoughts on your sobriety?
My dad loved it. He loved every minute of it. But I will share something interesting in addition, Brad, is that I thought that my sobriety would convince to reach out to people, but you have to make that decision first. And I realized that through my pops.
Yeah. Wow, man. Yeah, that's like we shared about it kind of earlier, like maybe the survivor's remorse, in a sense, right? Too, of like, you got through, and then, yeah, when you get sober, your life is just going up and things are going well. And it's like, man, do people around me not see this? Like, what is going on? And it's like their head can maybe be in the sand when it comes to it. It's like life with blinders on.
Yeah.
But thinking like, yeah, if I do this and things are changing for me, and then I can relate to that also well. I mean, I'm not going to go into all of the details, but I can relate to that also well. There's people around me that, I mean, I didn't necessarily, wish, but I thought after, all these years, they'd say, hey, like maybe I could at least give it a try. I don't know. It's tough, man. Well, thank you so much, dude. I really appreciate it, man. I really enjoyed this chat with you. And the book too is out right now.
Yep. It's out right now. It's called Autopsy of My Former Self. It's on all platforms. I'm incredibly proud of it. You can also find my art on Jermaine Dante _ art on Instagram. I've been a critically acclaimed artist for 12 years. Man, I have clients from Stephen Curry to Robert De Niro and everybody in between. I've done massive projects working with the NBA, NFL, Major League Baseball, Moet Hennessy, corporations like Kaiser Permanente, North Bay Health. So my art lives in homes, offices, and health and wellness spaces. And one of the coolest things that I experienced at the beginning of this year was to go from life support and literally on my deathbed at Kaiser Permanente to now having 7 6x8 pieces of art in their corporate headquarters. And next year I'll be working on their Southern California building. So talk about a full moment of 360.
Yeah. Wow, man. That's beautiful, dude. And I'm sure we could, well, I know we could chat for probably 3 hours, man, about the book and about how the art thing started. But hey, maybe we'll leave a little bit for the audience to check out the book. I'm sure that some of these questions will be answered in there. I am curious, man. What have you learned most about yourself over these last 12 years?
To forgive myself. I learned how to forgive myself, because it's really easy to continue to be hard on myself, whether it's relationships that have yet to be healed, whether it's thinking back in hindsight of why didn't I get started on my journey earlier? Why didn't I become the person I am today 10 years ago? Really learning to forgive myself. And, when I first got sober, I had this chip on my shoulder and I was like, anybody that ever says anything to me, I'm cutting them out. And the biggest thing that I can do now is just love on people in spite of themselves. If I just transfer that negativity into just beautiful positivity, man. And I just want to be a beacon of life to everyone in and around me and anyone that would love to get to know me.
Yeah, awesome, man. Love that. Such an important part of the process is the forgiveness, not only of the past, but even of the present moment. I think you kind of started out this thing of like, I think I remember like, I'm not perfect. And that's so relatable to me too. It's even forgiving myself for, the way I go about things and still learning in today's world as well.
Yeah.
Great share. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you, brother. I appreciate you, man. I appreciate you having me on. I'm beyond humbled. I really do appreciate you. Keep doing what you're doing, man. I had a chance to go through everything, of course, prior to the message I sent you. I appreciate you reaching back out to me and making this happen. Keep saving lives, man, because even though it may not be something that is shared every single day, somebody is watching and you're helping a lot of people. Thank you for being part of this community.
Thanks, man. Yeah, thank you. That means a lot. Yeah. Thanks so much.
It's a cool community, so I appreciate you, man.
Well, there it is. Another incredible episode here on the podcast. Huge shout out to Jermaine. I mean, come on. Changing his life, turning it around, writing a book, doing art, incredible stuff. So grateful that he jumped on and shared just his incredible story of where he was and how things look for him now. I'll drop his Instagram down in the show notes below if you want to check out his book. He's rocking and rolling. So thank you. If you're enjoying the podcast, be sure to drop a 5-star review on Spotify, a written review on Apple. Thank you so much, and I'll see you on the next one.